Welcome back. This is the Discrete Dev Update. I'm here with Brandon Kerner. Brandon, welcome.
It's good to be back. We have a lot to talk about.
That's what I heard.
This has been the busiest week for development that we've ever had, or the last 2 weeks.
Well, let's get into it.
Absolutely. So one of the big things that you saw from our Twitter was that we were able to successfully create a Genesis block and store it in a JSON file. We added a routine called Generate Genesis in our testing suite, and it's working beautifully.
So what does that do?
What this allows us to do is create a lot more rigorous tests using an actual blockchain state as the base. And this basically opens the door to be able to test transactions. And this leads into my next point, which is probably the biggest news. Hold on to your seat, because this is huge. This is massive.
I'm ready for it.
We have private transactions fully functional. This means Triptych is fully functional. This means our cryptography is fully functional. This means our database is fully functional. Everything is working. Our sampling of the database, our verification of the protocol, and committing it to a block. It all works.
Wow, that's ahead of schedule.
It is way ahead of schedule, but it gets even better. First, I'm going to elaborate on what this means and what this entailed. This means that wallets can also process private transactions and correctly determine if they own any new outputs, because as you can tell with privacy, this requires a little bit of extra work, since you actually have to decrypt every single output and check if your decryption key matches the private key for an output's public key. It's a little bit resource intensive, but it can be done across thousands and thousands of outputs a second easily. The other thing that we added as well is Bulletproofs Plus, and this completes the cryptography suite for our coin logic, as specified in the technical paper. So we have Bulletproofs Plus and Triptych both implemented.
Congratulations, that's incredible.
There's more on that front, but I do want to take a little bit of time to talk about our readable suite. So we added a whole new namespace called Readable to actually handle passing objects to and from JSON a lot faster. And this allows us to do a lot more with the Rpc API. This allows us to decode objects from JSON before actually decoding them into their proper encoding to see if there's any, data fields missing, to make sure that nothing is too broken. And this is actually going to be very useful for our nodes when they're actually determining their own little private scores for how other nodes are operating in the network, because every node in our network is going to be intelligent and skeptical and honest. And so we integrated all of that into the coin logic as well, which means we got rid of these clunky readable methods that just did simple string appending for creating the JSON objects. We're actually doing it nice and proper now. Again, those were only meant to be a placeholder for better logic later, because I just wanted to be able to print stuff to file while we were testing. So I'm glad that all of that's working.
Great. So the coin logic is working. You can mint blocks, publish transactions. What about networking?
There is a lot of networking stuff to come soon. Currently, we're in the process of getting a lot more stuff outside of networking done, because we want to have everything ready so we can just test networking right off the bat. So I did actually want to talk about real quick the coin logic, because if you remember correctly, we also allow for Bitcoin style transactions as well.
Right.
And these are implemented. We got this done in the last 2 weeks as well. We have transparent transactions, as we call them, in our coin logic.
That's awesome.
And this required overhauling our SHA-256, the hashing algorithm that we use. We had to overhaul this to have a lot more helpful routines, such as doing better comparison and also simple arithmetic. So this is actually going to be very nice down the line, because it means that we can rely on a lot more syntactic sugar. It doesn't end there. We added another transaction type, which completes the full set of transaction types for our network for now, called the mixed transaction. This is a Zcash style transaction, but it's even more powerful because it allows us to mix an arbitrary amount of private and transparent inputs and also outputs as well into a valid transaction. This means that you could seamlessly merge multiple transactions together. A useful utility for something like CoinJoin, but for us, it's very useful because it allows us to spend both private and transparent inputs and also create private and transparent outputs for any given wallet. So this means that you can send any coins from a set of wallets to another set of wallets in our network. And this basically completes the coin logic.
That's
it's
awesome.
Very powerful, very, very powerful. And because we have the full transaction set complete, we're working on adding a new class called full transactions, which will take the place of private transactions in that class, in our generic methods, in the transaction pool class, in the visor, and in our RPC API, and in our wallet, and a lot more. We began actually overhauling the wallet class, and we moved a lot of the important like methods and routines to wallet address class, which is in its own file now for, this is part of the refactor as well. And we can create all of these transactions and more. We can even actually do unsigned transactions now. And this is what's nice about that, is that this allows us to create an unsigned transaction and sign it at a later date. And the reason why we needed that is because of the way mixed transactions work. I'm actually really happy with how we were able to get that working. So a lot of stuff has been done.
Yeah, it sounds like it. It sounds like it's been a busy couple of weeks. That's terrific. Well, that's big news. What else has been going on?
So outside of the actual Discrete repository, we're also working on getting our wallet GUI working on cross-platform. That's actually being worked on by another developer, and it's coming along very nicely. We already had something working, but it was Windows specific, and now we're just moving that into a cross-platform framework. We're very excited to see where that goes.
Now, when you say cross-platform, are you talking about Linux and Mac?
Absolutely.
In addition to Windows? Oh, okay, that's great.
And there's more as well. We're working on a lot more stuff for the website and for the IDO page.
Great.
Look forward to those in the future.
So it sounds like you're ahead of schedule. When do you think you're going to start working on Consensus?
Consensus will be coming. Again, I can see Consensus seeing a valid testnet implementation very soon. I can't give a date specifically yet.
Could it be later in the quarter, or maybe early in the new year?
Yeah, later in the quarter or earlier in the new year is when you'll start seeing a lot more code for that being pushed. We really want to get networking fully functional and keep nodes and their scoring algorithms. We want to do that first before we actually get the full implementation of Consensus done.
For sure.
This also requires implementation of something called reliable broadcast. In addition to that, we also have to allow for multicasting and a lot more. So it's going to be a lot of work, but we're excited to do it.
Awesome. Anything else?
And other news, we also have the Discrete.net domain now, which is going to be very helpful. It's much shorter and better than getdiscrete.org. So we're excited for that.
Okay, that's great. I know one of the next big steps is a private testnet. When do you think we can expect to see that?
We can expect it as early as December if progress continues as fast as it has. I mean, we've only actually had the Discrete repository up in public for a couple months now. And in that time, we've been able to integrate the entire cryptographic suite and complete our entire coin logic. So I'm very excited and hopeful. And I think we're actually going to see private testnet much sooner than expected.
Oh, that's great news. A few minutes ago, in passing, you mentioned something about a refactor. What can you tell me about that?
We've been working on a lot these last 2 weeks. One of the big things that we're working on right now is a major refactor of everything. Since we're not exactly in public testnet yet, this gives us a lot more room to fix certain problems that arise in our code. One of the big things being optimization, and also making sure that our code is as clean and as small as possible. Having a small code base means it's easier to maintain, and we don't want the bloat that most other blockchains have with them. We're working on a major refactor right now to condense the extra field in private transactions to a single field called transaction key, since we're not going to allow multiple transaction keys inside of a transaction for now. This also means that these transactions are going to be a few bytes smaller.
Sure, you're optimizing the code.
Yep.
Discrete's already pretty fast, so I'm sure whatever optimizations or refactoring you're doing now are going to make a big difference.
Absolutely. One of the big things that was really slow was our print method. So our printable namespace. So actually we've moved printable and exceptions and utility functions. We've moved it all into a new namespace called common, just so it reads better and makes it more accessible instead of being specific to the coin logic.
What else have you done as part of this refactoring?
We've added a lot more Rpc endpoints for our Rpc API. We've optimized all the printable methods, like I said earlier. So the prettify function, byteify, and hexify all use buffered strings now, and we actually fill the buffer to the correct sizes for both. That's nice. That means that those functions are going to be a lot faster. We fixed a few issues with how we were using our encryption. Again, the encryption wasn't broken, it was just how we were using it. And we did several other renamings of functions within, the integration between Discrete Core and also the main Discrete repository. And the biggest thing was we fixed a lot of interoperability problems between the crypto suite and the Discrete repository. So that's all fixed now, and we can actually do a lot of data passing that we weren't able to do before.
Well, thanks, Brandon. Wow, that was a huge update. Big news this week. Thanks again so much, and we'll talk to you again soon.
It's always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.